Hey everyone, we are starting the show. Hello everyone. Welcome to Learn the Tech, the show where we talk about a subject every week that you choose. So if you have an idea of a subject that is good for 1 hour, or sometimes maybe we could do 2 or 3 subjects that are shorter in time about technology that you'd like to learn how it works or what it is exactly. This is the show for that. We talk about technology. So this is Learn the Tech, show number 24. We are October 11, 2016, and welcome to this 1 hour show. Today we're going to talk about dangers of our technology because it's something that affects some people. You know, not everybody thinks about it, but I do get requests, and I do have people that are clients where I go to, and they ask me questions about the dangers surrounding what they use every day. And of course, we see TV shows, we see all sorts of reports on the internet about the dangers of different types of technology we use. And up to what point is it really dangerous or not? I'm not here to make you change your mind about is it dangerous or not, but I am here to give a light on what we're going to talk about today of the different dangers of the technology. And hopefully you're going to enjoy learning a little more. Maybe, shed more light on some of the technology you're using and not be as scared as some people are of our different technologies. The biggest problem with what we're going to talk today is the fact that you have several different sources, not always of, let's say, good quality, meaning that there are websites that have a tendency to make everything worse than they are. There are people that will try to put more emphasis on the scary side of something. But, we're going to try, and I'm going to try to have a very down-to-earth and hopefully pretty much equilibrium in what we're going to talk today of the good and the bad sides of what we might think and how it can affect our health also, because technology we use can affect our health, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today in our Learn the Tech. So, dangers all around us. I mean, you go outside, while crossing the street, can get hit by a car, a truck, anything. And, we got to quantify danger because it's, what's more dangerous? Crossing the street, using a cell phone, using the technology every day. There are different dangers around us. And, of course, our technology, as we advance in technology and use all sorts of electronic gadgets, there's some things that kind of arise here, and people say, well, I'm not sure, is it? I think it's dangerous. Of course, the number one on our list is the cell phone. Cell phones, when they started, well, people started thinking about usage of cell phones, but the electromagnetic spectrum, the use of radio waves. I mean, until the cell phone arrived, apart from maybe some people using walkie-talkies, there was not a lot of talk about electromagnetic radiation, radio waves, because we didn't have objects that transmitted radio waves next to our head or next to our body, and so we didn't really think about it. But yet, there was some implications. I mean, as far as radio started existing, they made big fields with antennas and very powerful transmitters. What happened is that there are some people that started saying, well, since that is here, I don't feel quite well. Or there seems to be more people that die of this disease or cancer or something. And is it related? We also have to be careful because the human mind also plays tricks on us, meaning there's a new antenna there. If we let our minds go free, we might start feeling bad because we interpret, or our brain will have us go into this notion that we might get sick because of radio waves. So there has to be a very scientific way of measuring this. But the cell phone brought something that, of course, we didn't have before, something that we use for minutes or hours, and that we can, if we talk on the phone, you have it next to your head. And now you're kind of blasting microwaves through your brain and through your body. And I always thought about something. As a tech guy, I often wear a shirt and put my phone here. And sometimes I think, well, this thing, especially a smartphone, is transmitting all the time because there's all sorts of things, data, there's updates, there's all sorts of things happening. So these radio waves travel through my body. And of course, the first thing that people start thinking is there something bad about this? So there are studies that came out that say, hey, there's increased cancer rates, increased brain cancer rates. Others, no difference. But the thing is, we have to take the studies from a good source. And that's the important thing. The studies that say there's absolutely nothing wrong are the ones usually done by the cell companies, because they don't want you to think that this is dangerous, because you're not going to buy one and you're not going to pay every month to use a cell phone or a smartphone. And so they, of course, will have their own studies. Yes, there will be studies from groups that are kind of extreme in their way of thinking, and they want to make sure that we think that this is dangerous, and they will use all sorts of pretexts and use people that are already sick. So that's also something that we have to, think about. Some studies online are from extreme groups that just want you to be scared. Some are from carriers that, of course, don't want you to be scared. But there are some studies that are smack in the middle. One of the most important studies that I've seen is a British study. And they followed 25,000 people. And they followed these people for 15 years with cell phone usage, regular cell phone usage of every kind. It's probably one of the most exhaustive study that we've seen yet. There are some right now that are actually happening also. There's a study that is going on right now. It's been going on for the past 5 or 6 years, and it is supposed to come to a conclusion somewhere like in 2025, because they're going through the study, and they are following more people, 100,000 people that have to report and answer questionnaires and answer questions of all sorts with health. They have to pass tests and see if people that have a cell phone that use it all the time, is there some kind of danger? The British study kind of said that in 15 years they could not see a significant difference between users of cell phone and people that did not. But it did have a conclusion that was interesting. They said 15 years is maybe not enough of a length of time to see a difference. But one thing for sure is that we've been using cell phones now for 20, 25 years, 30 years, depending on the cell phone that you had. If you look at the statistics, if you look at the medical conditions, if you look at everything, there is right now no evidence of increased cancer rates or anything. Now it's been more than a quarter century that people have been intensely using their phones. So what that means is that we should start seeing a pattern of something. Now, what I'm saying here is not that there's no dangers in using this. But what I'm saying here is that for now we aren't seeing really a difference, a big difference. And that's interesting, because I think that's the best study. That's very significant. Seeing that the average everyday person that's been using his phone for a long time, we don't seem to see any raise in types, especially for the cell phone, what was mostly checked is brain cancer because our cell phone are on our ear. One thing they do see is that, for example, in brain scans that they've done while you're using your phone, they could see that there's a heating, a natural heating by the radio waves of part of your brain close to where you're using your phone. And that might have an effect, might not have an effect. We're not really sure. We got to know one thing is that radio waves are non-ionizing. And that means that they don't, technically, from what we know, radio waves don't alter the basic foundation of our cells, which means they aren't doing what it takes to necessarily cause cancers that will arrive later on. But one study by the US that took a look at a small group. There were like 1,000 people that were really reporting every week. What they seem to say is they could see minute changes in the brains of people that were using their cell phone a lot and always using it as a phone next to your ear. And that one of the things that shows is that maybe and if you can, use your earbuds when you want to talk on your cell phone is maybe not a bad idea. Sorry, guys. Still have that throat problem. One of the things that is interesting about that small study also is that the scans that they did seem to show the more you use your phone, the more damage they could see after several weeks, months, and years. But they haven't seen cancer. They just seen that there is something going on. And it might not change anything, like it might cause cancer, So they issued what the basically the guidelines that are presently being used. And their guidelines actually right now, what they are saying is use your phone mostly when you need to use it. If you have to make a call, use headsets or use your earbuds because it takes the phone, the major creator of waves, away from your body. And there's no conclusion as to is it really dangerous or not. And that's what we are now. We're in a indecision. We don't really know. We haven't seen any anything that let us think that it might be dangerous to use them. But one thing for sure, I think just using common sense, when you use your phone, try to use your headsets and try to keep it away from you when you use it. Try not to always have it next to you, stuff like that. Maybe that's something that you should think about. Another interesting feature of phones is another study. So here you see somebody sleeping with his cell phone in his hand, and a lot of people keep the cell phone next to them in the nightstand, for example. Something that I never do. I always have my cell phone charging at night, and it's always in my office. It's far away from the bedroom. For some reason, personally, I don't like having that next to me in the bedroom when I'll be sleeping at night. Now, of course, it's farther away, especially if it's on your nightstand and so on. But an interesting study came up with this feature. They looked at people that were sleeping with their cell phones on the nightstand and people that were not sleeping with any devices, like no cell phones, anything around them. They seem to come to a conclusion that there is some kind of interference with our sleep when the phone is not far away. Many different theories are open on this one. One is, could it be the radio waves? Because your cell phone is transmitting bursts of data regularly. Is it the radio waves? Is it interfering with our sleep in some way? Is there something that's happening with that? Another theory is that if you have your phone on your nightstand, you probably have used it before going to sleep, so it might actually change your sleep patterns. We talk about the blue light. When you look at the white screen, like a big TV like this or on the cell phone, a white screen is not really white. It's more bluish in its light, especially with LEDs now. And they say maybe that is more of a chemical interference because we have blue light in our eyes. Our brain thinks it's daytime, and it's a very complex process. So that's also something we got to think about. Is it the radio waves? Is it because people have used it before going to sleep? Maybe they've used it, talked to somebody, it changed your pattern of sleeping. It dreams, stuff that you might be thinking about. So that's one thing. And personally, my phone's far away from the bed when I'm sleeping. I rather, have to get up and go fetch it in my office if it's ringing. And it ain't anyway because I have it always put in night mode, meaning it doesn't ring at night. And, if I wish to see something at 2 in the morning, I'll get up, I'll go pee, and then I'll go in my office, check a few things on the phone, see if, whatever I want to see. And then I'll go back to bed. But it rarely is. It does happen sometimes, but it almost never is on my nightstand next to me. For some reason, I don't know, I don't like it. And it could be just like something in my brain. I just don't like it. But that's something that I always take care of. What else do we have? TVs. So here's a nice Sony TV. Of course, this is a Toshiba TV. What's the dangers of the TVs? The TVs and every computer screen nowadays that use LED technology. What's the danger? It's the blue light that is sent out from the screen. Even though it looks white, it's bluish. Several studies. Once again, that is a very controversial subject. Does it interfere with its sleep or not? Some studies tend to say that yes. And the reason, or the science behind it, seems to say that, of course, humans are synchronized and have a brain that's working because of the environment on Earth. And what they seem to say is that our brain is the most active when it sees blue. Why? Because when you go outside in a nice sunny day and there's a blue sky, your brain knows that it's daytime, that it's time to work, it's time to do stuff. What happens when we use these devices with LED technology in the screen is that even though we don't see it as blue, our brain and our eyes do see the bluish tint of the lighting. And a lot of studies seem to say that it actually activates our brain into thinking, hey, it's daytime, we have to work. So when you go to sleep, you have difficulty sleeping because your brain is like hyperactive. It's trying to tell your body, well, no, I don't think it's time to sleep now. It's time to wake up. A lot of studies seem to give that a good foundation, saying that maybe we shouldn't watch our tablets, our smartphones, or even TV before going to bed. But the other thing that we have to think about, and one study kind of mentions that, is what if it's not at all because there's blue light in the TV or the screen? What if it's because you're watching something? And for example, if you're watching TV before bed, you're probably watching something. You might be watching something that as you know, a movie with action or something, and you're like, it wakes you up. So maybe it disturbs your sleep. Maybe it's the content. Maybe it's not the lighting. And that a few studies seem to say, no, it's not the lighting. It's the content that makes the difference. So you could see how difficult it is to really know. And what we need to do is basically we would have to take participants, and there are studies right now that are going on where what they are doing is giving the same, like showing you a screen of something that would normally calm you down, maybe want to make you go to sleep, with a lot of white in it so that there's kind of a blue light that goes to your mind, and in an enclosed environment where everybody's the same, and see, well, is it disturbing sleep compared to a group that isn't watching TV and they're just going to bed or whatever. So, that's controversial. Many devices have started being basically having in their menus reducing blue light effects. iPhones, many phones, many devices now come with blue light reduction. I know that Windows, for example, Windows will have soon a blue light switch where you can actually switch it on, and that means it's going to reduce all the blue light that's coming from your computer screen, for example. iPads have it. You can actually go into the settings, and there is a setting to lower the amount of blue light coming from the screen. So, once again, controversial. I'm not here to say that it's wrong or not. It could be possible. Everything's possible. Maybe if you have some sleep problems, be careful not to watch your iPad or your smartphone before going to bed. Maybe there's something there. Who knows? Microwave. This has been a subject of controversy for a long, long time. I remember in the 80s, people going crazy with these counters showing how much radiation actually escapes from the microwave. So what is a microwave, first of all? And you got to understand what's a microwave if you want to understand if it could be dangerous or not. A microwave, it's a radio transmitter. Very simple. It's a radio transmitter that works at 2,450 megahertz. The box in which the transmitter is an enclosed metal box that is shaped in a way that it traps the waves inside the box. And of course, you put something in there that's going to cook, so some of these radio waves are absorbed by the food itself. So there were a lot of theories. In the 80s, I remember saying, a friend of mine saying, "Hey, I don't use a microwave because when it's finished cooking, you take out the plate and it's still cooking. You see the waves are still there." And that always made me kind of laugh because, well, the waves are still there. It's a radio transmitter. Once it's switched off, there are no more waves. And a lot of people thought that because it seems to be cooking when you take it out, that there must be waves still there. And that's not the case. It's just because it's really hot. It will be the same thing that if you put, a chicken in the oven and you take out the chicken from the oven. A conventional oven is only heat. It's, basically infrared. And it will be the same thing. You'll still hear your chicken kind of cooking when you just take it out from the oven. So the first thing is that you got to take that out of your mind. There are no more waves when the microwave is finished. Because when it's finished, it just turned off the transmitter. And when you're transmitting a radio wave, when the switch is off, it stops. And that's it. There's no residual wave. It just stops. So no, there's no waves in your food. Nothing is dangerous in there. It's just really hot. And why is it hot? Because the properties of a microwave is that at 2,450 megahertz, you are vibrating the water molecules inside the food. So basically, as they're vibrating, they're creating heat. Of course, what probably is the major aspect of the microwave is more studies are actually showing that maybe the microwaves are not the best way to heat up our food because it seems to destroy much more the vitamins inside the food than conventional heating. And that could be possible because the difference between a microwave and a conventional oven is that a conventional oven will cook from outside towards the inside. Microwave is reversed. It cooks from the inside out. So basically, it might actually damage the molecules, the vitamins and the stuff, the minerals in there, more than conventional cooking. What else is dangerous in a microwave that people go crazy about? Residual radio frequencies coming out of it when it's working. Yes, this is an enclosure that is made in such a way that it keeps 99% of the radio waves inside the microwave. And I did say 99% because, yep, there are waves that are actually going through. You might notice that if you ever thought why your microwave in the front has like this grill, it's not, it's not super transparent. You see that there's something there with little holes. Well, that's because that sheet of metal in the front window is there to stop those waves from actually going out the window and cooking you when you're looking at the food. Now, yes, there are waves, okay? Yes, there are waves that escapes the microwave. There are waves that escapes every microwave oven that works. And it's simply because the waves are not kept inside at 99%. The shielding is not perfect. Some microwaves are worse than others. Some have problems with the way the shielding was done. Some are cheaper than others. So yes, some will send more waves outside than others. But you got to think that what's coming out of your microwave oven is very low power compared to what's going on inside the microwave oven, first of all. You might have noticed if you look at what's cooking in your microwave oven, you don't feel nothing. If there were so many radio waves escaping from the microwave oven, you'd feel something. You'd feel that something is wrong on your skin. But you know what? I have been one of those people that when I use a microwave oven, I never stay next to it. I'm a guy that loves radio stuff, so I understand radio waves more than the average person using just a microwave and not really understanding what it does exactly. And that said, I got to say that I know, and I always knew, that yes, there must be some waves escaping, of course. And of course, these waves, even though very low power, might interact with my body and maybe cause something. I don't know. But I do think that in general, what's escaping from the microwave is too low power to really go crazy. No, if you look on, when this show's over, search on YouTube for microwave radiation or microwave oven radiation, and you'll see tons of videos with people with these fancy equipment and saying, look at this, 8,000. Yeah, 8,000 what? What does it say? 8,000... Can you tell me, explain me the numbers? They just try to make you go crazy by, look at how high the level of radiation. Yeah, a lot of that is nonsense because what they do is they will set it at the smallest scale. So it looks like a big number, like there's a lot of waves, not necessarily. Take a voltmeter, and if you put the voltmeter in the range 1000 volts and you look at your wall socket, you'll see that the needle just goes a little bit. If you put it in the range of 200 volts, you'll see that the needle goes way higher. So there's, a lot of scary stuff that is nonsense. But that said, I am one of those that is not staying and looking at the food cooking in the microwave when I'm doing it. For some reason, I rather just stay away a little bit. But then again, you know what? What's escaping from your microwave is probably 10% of what you're receiving, or what your body's receiving from using your cell phone directly like this, next to your head. It all is relative. What's escaping here is very weak compared to your cell phone blasting your brain with a few watts of power in the microwave region, but not the same frequencies. 2450 here, 2450 megahertz, because it resonates the water molecules. Your cell phone is likely to be in 1.9 gigahertz. It's still what we call microwave, but it's far from the frequency of resonance of the water molecules. So that's why when you're using it, your brain isn't cooking. If your phone was at 2450 megahertz, maybe your brain would start to cook when you're talking on the phone. But, there are no residual waves once it's over. That is impossible. Waves don't get trapped in the food. But yes, there is an amount of radio waves that escapes from it. To what point it's dangerous? You know what? They've probably done some studies. I've never seen anything about somebody having cancer, having whatever, because of radio waves from the microwave. So don't go too crazy on these things. This, I would say, if I have something about cell phones that scares me much more than the phone itself, is the cell tower. Anybody that lives in a city will see these cell towers at a lot of places. And I sometimes am actually impressed by the fact that I see some cell towers right on top of apartment buildings. And I just think about how people live in the floors just below the antenna and thinking that, wow, how much power is there in that tower where they live with the antenna so close. So these are interesting things, and I would say this scares me much more than the cell phone itself, especially if you live near. I remember a client of mine that was extremely scared of radio waves and cell towers and stuff, and he actually made me find out about a map, because if you go on the internet, you will probably see pretty much everywhere we live, you can see maps of where cell towers are located. For example, here, the nearest cell tower, it's located about, I'd say about 200 feet from where I am located right now. Okay, kind of corner street to the left a little bit, on top of a building. But it's not, close to me. It's still 200 feet, so it's, the waves are much weaker. Remember that radio waves actually are, every time you double the distance with the antenna, the radio waves are 4 times weaker. So that means that the radio waves actually get weak real fast. So I would be scared. I'm not sure I'd live in an apartment building where the antenna is on top of the apartment building. I'm not sure I'd feel comfortable with that. That said, there are guidelines. There are a maximum amount of power that these antennas will actually, give out. You shouldn't be closer than this distance because of the maximum power allowed. Meaning that, in general, these antennas should normally be installed in such a way that anywhere human beings are walking, they never go above the amount of power that, or the amount of microvolts that basically are in the radio waves over there. So I would still take a look at this. And if I'd be moving into a nice house and see this right next to it, I would seriously think about moving to another house, not buying that one. I'll buy another one. I would think about that. That scares me. That does scare me, because these are extremely powerful. These are strong because they need to reach your cell phone wherever you are. So that's something I don't like. Maybe it's not something that I should be scared of, but my radio side is kind of scaring me on this, I gotta say. Okay. What else do we have? In our homes, we all have something that is probably of all the things that I've seen in the home is our electronics. Our electronics have PBDEs or HBCDs, which are flame retardant chemicals that every electronic device is coated with. So bromine, bisphenol is one of them. It's very popular. Basically, this TV has some for sure. I'm pretty sure it does. Why do they do this? Is because electronic devices, because they are plugged into our wall socket, because there could be some fault that will actually make an electronic problem in it that maybe could start a fire. They put that chemical on the circuit board and on the plastics of the devices because it's a flame retardant. Even if it's hot and there are flames that start, chances are the flames are just going to burn a little bit of the device, but your house won't burn down. Basically, it's to preserve your home, preserve your security at some point. But there's one major problem about these chemicals. If you've noticed, when you use a device, electronic device, for example, this TV here is warm to the touch on the back while it's working. And it's not when it's turned off, which is normal. Electronics and the way they're designed and what they have to do and the power they use will create and generate some heat. The danger of these chemicals right now is that the heat heats up the chemical, and of course the heat will radiate out of the device, and pretty much every study that we've seen is that the chemicals they use in here are everywhere in your home. So if you've installed all electronic devices, use your laptop, your TV, your stereo system, your whatever, surround sound, your couch, your chairs, if you have the floor, everywhere there are some chemicals. It's in the air. While I'm doing this show, my laptop, my TV, and probably my camera are creating little molecules of that chemical in the air that I'm breathing right now. Now, the chemicals they use in there for fire retardant have been shown in studies where they give or they put these chemicals in contact with lab rats, that it causes cancer. They seem to be cancer material. And actually, some of them, especially the bromine, biphenyl bromine, something like that, which is very, very popular, is in that list of possible cancer agents. So, what this means is that we are soon to see on boxes of devices, electronic devices that we buy, that there will be some icons, some little icon on the box that's going to say, well, this device doesn't use that type of chemical. Why? Because more and more people are getting a little scared of that. I got to say that when I read, actually I've seen a report on Canadian TV about that chemical and how it's used in electronic devices everywhere. It started making me think about how, these devices might actually be a little dangerous, especially when it's an enclosed space. So in your home in the wintertime, it's cold, everything's shut down. And they do say that there is a risk. There's what risk? Depending on what we're using. Sorry you're not seeing this picture, but it's like electronic stuff with an arrow that says what everything in your home is actually going to have that chemical. You know, that means that when everything's shut off, you're in your living room, there you're probably breathing in some chemicals. And there's not just that, there's tons of chemicals that went into creating this TV, for example. So all of that is still there to some point, and the heat will make some of these molecules go into the air. So electronic stuff, you know, when we say that, oh, it smells like a new electronic device, you know, when I go to my clients and they buy a new computer and I turn it on for the first time, I always say to them, the smell of a new computer. Well, you might be smelling a lot of bad chemicals when you're actually smelling the new computer, basically. So, yep, another danger in our homes, every electronic device we have, everything, because they want to try to lower the amount of possibility that your home catches fire, basically. If you have an old CRT or an old big screen, you know, those big fast screens, if you're watching TV with an old CRT, an old big tube TV, you know, those really big heavy TVs, one of the things that's always been kind of a wonder is the amount of electrons that actually go through the screen. Old CRTs have two things that are dangerous. Now, in normal use, it's not dangerous for anyone because either it's a big TV and you're really far away, or because it is working fine and the enclosure is okay. But if the back is removed here, one of the things these TVs actually do is create X-rays. The cathode ray tube in these TVs requires enormous amounts of voltage to work, several thousand volts. And that is done with a circuit, a flyback, that generates very, very high voltage that is sent to the tube, but that very high voltage actually creates X-rays because the electrons are excited at a very, very high rate. So any electronics guy that will fix TVs or monitors knows that you have to be careful because you could have exposure to X-rays from TVs. Second of all, in the front of all of these old TVs, you have a phosphorus coating because there's a cathode ray tube that is actually, there's an electron gun in the back that sends electrons on the screen, and that's why these old TVs, the screen is bright, because electrons will actually hit the phosphorus coating, and where it hits, it excites the atoms and it shines. And that's how they work. Problem, a lot of these go through the screen, meaning when you're sitting in front of one of those TVs, there could be some electrons going through and you're being hit by them and you're not supposed to. Now, these TVs have existed for a very, very, very long time, since the 50s and 60s, and we haven't seen any health hazard. And that's the thing, you know, at the beginning, I wanted mostly to talk about these because they're less and less visible now. I don't have any more of these at home. Or yeah, I still have an old CRT one. But I wanted also to show that this is an example of, at the beginning, people were kind of going a little crazy about the possibility that electrons hit you, and especially the first TVs, they weren't really that well done, and so they were probably generating a lot more than today's TVs that have all sorts of, you know, strict laws that prevent them from doing so. Basically, we haven't seen anything, and so that's why you got to be careful when technology arrives and when people go crazy about, well, what if? But we have to, you know, one important thing is we have to talk about it. It's very important because one day we might have a technology that is so dangerous that we have to stop using it. Apart from that, what is the problem for a lot of people is in your electronics, make sure that you use your computer correctly. That's another danger. Hurting yourself while using your electronics. Remember that when you're sitting at a computer, there are guidelines of how you should be sitting, how you should be set up, because you can hurt yourself in some ways. For example, for many years, I had a bad chair and desk. I was not at the good height. And when I would use my computer a lot, I'd start feeling pain in my arms, which got fixed when I got a new desk, a new ergonomic chair, and everything was all right. But it's very important, especially if you work many hours a day. I work many hours a day on my computer. Make your videos, make the live shows. Well, you gotta make sure that you're set up right, that your screen can angle so that it will follow and be in direct line with you watching it, that you'll be sitting in a comfortable chair. Too many people are actually sitting in all sorts of chairs and they don't really care. And at some point, if you use your computer a lot, it could impact on your health, your general health. It's very important to be careful with that. High strain is another problem. High strain is basically the effect of you looking at a screen for a long time. You know what? Our eyes have never been made for us to look at a screen for hours at a time. They are made to look at distant objects that change all the time, that move all the time, not at a computer screen that is a feet and a half, 2 feet in front of us. And so that gives eye strain. So that is something that can also give you headaches and all sorts of dizziness. One of the things that you need to do, and that's very important, if you don't want to strain your eyes to a point where it could be a problem, be careful, and every 30 minutes that you're watching a screen, that you're concentrated on your computer screen, the guidelines are that every 30 minutes you should look away at an object that is far away for a few minutes before you go back to your computer screen. That will make your eyes work the way they are intended to work. That's to look at distant objects, moving objects, not at something that's always at the same distance, meaning that they always focus exactly the same distance. So every 30 minutes, take time to look at something else for a few minutes that's farther away. If you have a window, look outside for 2, 3, 4 minutes. Then go back to your screen. If you do that, you'll see that maybe you'll have less headaches. Maybe you'll find that your eye fatigue is not as much of a problem. So these are things that are the dangers of our technology we're using every day. Routers. They scare a lot of my clients. Routers are radio transmitters. There's these antennas on top. So for most people, routers are like cell phones. Oh, they must be dangerous. And I actually have a lot of clients that will shut down their router, the Wi-Fi router, at night because they are scared that it could be bad for their health. Once again, it's talk about radio frequencies surrounding us. And you know what? My take on that. These routers are very low power. Typically, this could be 5 watts of power. This, 500 milliwatts of power. That's 10 times less power than this. And 10 times less power than this means that it probably is means that it's so weak that, you know what, it's probably not going to do much, basically. So the danger of a router is, for me, a non-danger. I don't think these devices actually send out enough power to make a real difference or be dangerous to anybody. And very often, your router is not in the same room as the bedroom. They're somewhere else in the house. So they're too far away to affect you. Yes, I gotta say, I would not install a router next to my bed. That I would not like. But for the most part, routers are far away from where we sleep, and the radio waves are not that bad, basically. So don't be scared of your router. That device sends radio signals at a very weak power, and they are not, personally, I think there's zero danger of any Wi-Fi router around you. And that probably, my argument is always that in your home, just because of cell towers, because of your phone, because of everything that you have, you probably receive already more radio waves going through your body than what your router is sending out in your home, basically. Electromagnetic charge from wires. That's something also that I often have clients talking about. They have these wires going through with all the electronic gadgets plugged in, and often I will hear a client saying, "Hey, I unplugged these wires because there's electromagnetic fields around the electricity." And of course, because the current in our homes are AC current, that's alternative current, it means that the electromagnetic field around it switches very fast, typically 50 times a second in Europe, 60 times a second in North America. And they, of course, are surrounding every wire when there's current going through it. And one of the things that I always tell my clients that go crazy over the possibility that these currents the electromagnetic field around these can cause problems, is always, first of all, I tell them, well, don't forget that even if you unplug a wire here, there are wires going through your walls. You might be actually sleeping next to a wire that's in the wall that's sending out through the night electromagnetic energy, and you don't even know about it. And that's why I often say to these people, stop going crazy, because most of the time you're next to a source, but you don't know it. And you attack only the source that you see. But there's a lot of sources that you don't know, but that are actually creating those electromagnetic fields. Then again, if we look at power lines, I gotta say, there's this, every summer, there's a park that I like to go on the east part of Montreal, where it's, I love to go biking there. And they have a place where you can watch birds. But there's these really high-powered power lines. And it always, it's very quiet there. So every time I pass under it with my bike, I always hear the buzzing of the electricity and the wires. It always kind of, makes me think, wow, there must be a lot of electromagnetic radiation just below these big power lines. And I even have a story with that, because once it just rained, and I was crossing a street where a very high powered power line was going through, and I actually got pinched. My finger, it pinched when I was actually touching the metal of my bike. And that's because there was so much electromagnetic field around that power line that the metal of my bike was kind of creating a very small electric current, but enough to kind of pinch me hard enough to surprise me. And that's where I learned that if I go under power lines, and if anybody of you go under power lines with a bike, you have to hold with at least one hand, hold hard a metal part of your bike. That way you won't get that pinching or that you won't be surprised. It's just because the contact between my thumb and the bike was not good enough, so it pinched. But when the contact is good, you don't feel nothing. But it shows you that power line really high up had an interaction with me on the bike at ground level. Another funny thing about that is if you have a fluorescent tube and you put it at arm's length like this under a power line and it's dark, you will see that it just barely shines. In a dark environment, it shines enough that you could see the glow. So, there are interactions everywhere. And once again, would I be living next to a power line? I'm not sure. I look at the houses that they are constructing, and they are all following the high-powered lines. And I'm like, I'm not sure I'd like to live there. What sort of interaction, what could be happening because of that in the electromagnetic fields? And finally, one last thing that a lot of people don't think about. When you use your laptop on your lap, there's another danger lurking here. You probably noticed that laptops, they become hot when we use them. And you know what? You can actually have burns on your skin from using a laptop a long time on your laps. And there are dozens and dozens of cases of people going, for example, to the doctor, and they notice that their skin pigmentation has changed, became red or became brownish, and they're wondering what the hell is happening. And the first thing that the doctor is going to say is, are you using your laptop on your laps? The heat from the laptop is not hot enough that you feel that it burns, but it's hot enough that it actually kind of cooks your skin. So it is always something to think about. If you're using a laptop, you better have a little something to put it on your lap, not put it directly on your lap, because the heat, very surprising what can happen with the heat that's generated with the laptops. And it's surprising. I've used my laptops many times directly on my lap, and at some point I can feel how hot it can become. So you got to be careful with that. It's something to think about, that's for sure, before you use your laptop. And you know what? In any type of problems that you might wonder, is it dangerous or not, use common sense. Look at the pro and look at the bad. Think through it. Search. Make a lot of research of, could that be dangerous or not? Is this dangerous or not? Don't look at one study. Look at several studies from different groups. You have a better understanding. A lot of people, they look at the first study and says, oh my God, cancer. Did you look at other studies? Don't just believe one study. Look at other studies. Some studies are no good. Some studies are not done right. Some studies are from groups that should not do studies. So, it's like saying that the tobacco industry will do a study on how cigarettes are good for you. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm going to trust the tobacco industry in telling me this. So, use your common sense. Do some research. And yes, there's scary stuff. It is true. With all what I said today, the chemicals and everything. But, we got to live. We got to do stuff. There are maybe some technologies worse than others. But for now, if there's no official proof that, oh yeah, that is bad for you, well, that's, of course, you can take precautions. Make sure that, you don't use that technology in a way that's not intended, Be careful not, maybe to use your cell phone, 8 hours a day like this, every day. Maybe that's not common sense. Maybe that's crazy. Do what you can to make things as safe as possible. And, probably everything will be all right. So I hope you enjoyed this show about the dangers of our technology. It was fun to do because I could read a lot about all sorts of dangers and studies, and it was really interesting. And I do have a passion for that also, seeing what interactions and what could happen with our body with different technologies we use, with radio waves and so on. And it is interesting. So this was Learn the Tech, show number 24. It is already over for October 11th, 2016. If you enjoy our shows, why not subscribe to our channel? Why not send me a subject that you want me to talk about? For example, next week, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to look at all your suggestions. I've got a few suggestions from you guys already. Maybe you can send me some more suggestions, and we'll see what I'm going to talk about next week. I'm not sure yet, so I cannot say for now. But send me your subjects. If you want me to talk about something about technology for 1 hour, I'm here for that, and I'll be happy to do it. Some subjects require more, more study than others. Some subjects I'm not super knowledgeable about. Others, yes, I am. So, hey, maybe we'll check it out. And, of course, have a nice week, everyone. See you next Tuesday for our tech show where we answer your questions at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 1900 hours UTC, and Learn the Tech at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 2200 hours UTC. Thanks, everyone. Have a nice week. See you next Tuesday. Bye-bye.